what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy the
cornerbacks in the transfer portal. It's something I want to look at because a report came out the other day that LSU has contacted Colorado transfer Cormani McClain. Now, you all remember McClain and his recruiting. He was a 5-star recruit. He was committed to Miami in October of 2022, but he flipped to Colorado in January just after Deion Sanders was hired, and then he ultimately signed with the Buffaloes. He was one of the first commits to Colorado after they hired Deion Sanders. He was a 5-star recruit. He was the top cornerback in the country coming out of Lakeland High School in Florida. And then, of course, that wild recruitment with him in Miami, then flipping to Colorado. He's since been in the portal, and there's been a lot of issues with him. When he entered his name in the portal on Friday, you heard a report from Deion Sanders come out and say, well, you know, I would like for the guy to show up on time, to watch more film. I think he has a lot of maturing to do. Now, how much of that is true? How much of that is embellished? I don't know. You guys know me. It is no secret that I am not a big Deion Sanders fan. However, I'm going to take Deion for his word on this one and say that it's at least a little bit true. He may have exaggerated a little bit, may be mad that this guy's leaving his program, as well as a mass exodus of other players that don't want to play for Deion now, but there's going to have to be at least some truth to this. The biggest thing I've seen, when McClain talked about the 11 schools that contacted him, LSU was on that list. Florida and Miami were not. And those were the teams that recruited him the heaviest initially coming out of high school. So maybe they heard something as well and decided to back off. You would think that, look, it's a lot like Jordan Gilbert, right? He's at LSU now. LSU wanted him. He went to Texas A&M. He enters the portal, and as soon as he enters the portal, LSU jumped all over him. You did not see the Florida schools do that with Cormani McClain. So maybe there is a little bit to it. McClain, for what it's worth, pushed back on it. And he said, look, I don't want to play for clicks. I want to go play for a coach that actually wants to win, that actually wants to see me develop. Now, I don't think Deion Sanders is a very good football coach. I have made that clear. Me and T-Bob have went back and forth on this numerous times on this show. But if you're a defensive back, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. As far as hands-on coaching, there's probably not a ton of people better than Deion Sanders, at least at that specific position group. So, you know, McClain, I got a hard time believing that. Now, I do understand you don't want to play for clicks things. You take the good and the bad with Deion Sanders, right? He's brought a ton of publicity to that program, but maybe it's a little bit too much. Maybe it's too much flash. Maybe it's too big of a spotlight. That spotlight is not for everyone. Maybe McClain's one of those players. Now, as far as cornerbacks in the transfer portal outside of Cormani McClain, because we just talked to Preston, right? And what did he say? It's going to be somebody who can come in and be a starter, someone who has starting experience. While McClain might be the most talented guy out there, he's probably the most coveted guy in the transfer portal. He hasn't played a ton. I mean, he played sparingly a year ago, and that was his only year of college football. There's two guys I want to highlight that have actually played in big-time football games, that have a lot of experience, that could come in and possibly help you in the secondary that needs a lot of help. First one I want to highlight is Deani Hill from Marshall. So he played 2 years with the Thundering Herd. He didn't do much his first season, but in 2023, he played in 13 games. He's played in 23 games total in college. In 2023, he recorded 55 tackles. He reeled in an interception. It's not bad for the cornerback spot. He's also got pretty good size as well. He's over 6 feet tall. The biggest issue with Deani Hill, through no fault of his own, is that he was at the group of 5, right? If you're looking for someone to start right away, can he make that jump up a level in competition? Now, Marshall's been a good program for a long time. We saw him upset Notre Dame a couple years ago. But that's going to be the issue with him. If you're targeting a guy out of the portal and you need for him to come in and start, I think he's got to have Power 5 experience, at least a little bit. Second guy I want to look at is a guy whose name kind of surfaced in the portal about 48 hours ago, and it was a pretty big surprise. It's Ed Woods from Arizona State. He's a redshirt senior. He has 1 year of eligibility left, but he's appeared in 32 games for the Sun Devils. He was a part of the 2020 recruiting class. Look, he had been running with the ones in spring camp. He was in that starting group. He was expected to be in line for a starting position come this fall. Last season, he had 33 tackles. He forced 2 fumbles. He had an interception. This is a guy that was a pretty decent recruit coming out of high school. There were a lot of programs that were after him. He ultimately signed with Arizona State, played well. I mean, I just mentioned it. He was in line to be a starter. He played in 32 games. 33 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, an interception. There's something going on at Arizona State, though. I'm not quite sure what it is. But, Dillingham, when they hired him, they were all really excited about him. Ed Woods is not the only big-time player on that team to enter the transfer portal lately. They've had about 8 guys enter the portal in the last 2 weeks, and a lot of them were guys that they were really going to count on. So if you're LSU, and let's say you do get to that 79, 80 scholarship number that Preston was talking about, okay, you know they want 2 or 3 defensive tackles. And keep in mind, the number they're at now, that includes Gio Paez, that includes the guys that have already signed and just have not made it on campus yet. Let's say you get one of West, Barrow, and Dominic Williams. You get one of those guys, and then you bring in Zach Swanson as a depth piece. So you get 2 of those guys. That puts you at 82. I imagine they're going to dip into the portal for a running back and a corner. Right now, as far as experience goes, there's not a guy out there that really has much more than Ed Woods. I think he's a solid player. He's a big-bodied guy. He's played in a lot of big-time football games. Arizona State, that's a program that's in limbo. When the Pac-12 was disbanded and USC and UCLA, Washington, Oregon, they all left, Arizona State was kind of left in the wings. So it makes sense, at least for me, why Ed Woods would enter the transfer portal. He wants to be part of one of those big-time conferences now. Something that Arizona State, they got left behind, plain and simple. They're not going to be that. That's an extra spot in the college football playoff. It's going to be 3 SEC teams, 3 Big 10 teams. Everybody else is fighting for those other spots. Whether it's at large, whether it's 2 from the Big 12, the ACC. So it makes sense from Ed Woods. Does it make sense for LSU? I think it does, because who do you have on your roster right now? Ashton Stamps has kind of been the constant there. He was a freshman that came in. He was not an early enrollee last year, but, he made the most of his opportunity in fall camp. He's a name that we kept hearing over and over and over in fall camp leading up to the season. Didn't get a ton of play early in the year, but got some starts later in the year. And while it was a mixed bag, first off, everyone on the defense was a mixed bag. Secondly, I thought he did some nice things. He's got a good size on him. He's got a frame to where he can put on some weight. He was still young. He was a true freshman a year ago. Javian Toviano's out there. He started a lot of games last year. When Zy Alexander went down, you went Jeremiah Hughes, who's now in the portal, and then Javian Toviano was kind of the next guy up. He was hit or miss at times, but he's also a guy that can play corner as well as safety. We've talked about it a lot on this show. What's his natural spot? Is it corner or is it safety? We're not quite sure one way or the other. You got Zy Alexander coming back. He's not going to be available till fall camp. He had that knee injury. What's he going to look like? Is he going to be a step slow because of that injury? I thought he was your best corner last year before he went down. And then you have a lot of talent. You bring in a Jair Brown from Ohio State. You still have J.K. Johnson. So these are guys that have played, but they're not running with the ones right now. The ones has been Ashton Stamps and Javian Toviano, and then recently, true freshman early enrollee P.J. Woodland has came in and kind of grabbed that spot from Toviano. You watch the practices later in spring. You go back and watch the spring game. It was Stamps and Woodland. And Woodland's a guy that's only about 170 pounds. He needs to put on some weight. Now, I'm excited about Woodland's potential. I've seen him practice, and then by all accounts, they're very high on him. I'm not sure he's ready to play, though. He's got a lot of work to do in the weight room. Do you want your 170-pound true freshman corner out there playing against USC in week 1? If he's good enough, sure, but I don't know if that's your best option. Maybe aim a little bit higher than that. Ed Woods is a guy that you can look at. He's played a lot of football. I think that's your option number 1. Now, if that falls through, you can give Deani Hill a call, whether he's a starter or quality depth piece. He's played a lot of college football, but Ed Woods from Arizona State, a name to keep an eye out on.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.